The Asus ProArt Display 5K with an MSRP that's half the price of the Apple Studio display affords the same 5K resolution in a similar 27-inch form factor. So if you're looking for a more affordable 5K display when compared to the Studio display, this is worthy of your consideration.
Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Mac. Be sure to thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and then enable notifications with the bell icon so you won't miss any upcoming videos.
Okay, so first a quick unboxing. So here's a look at everything that's included with the Asus ProArt Display 5K. The biggest draw to the ProArt display is that it's a true 5K panel, so you don't have to worry about any of the UI scaling issues that sometimes make 4K displays seem off, for lack of a better word, when used with macOS. There are of course ways to work around this with certain utilities, but I prefer to have a native 5K panel, and Asus's display provides just that. The ProArt 5K display is an IPS panel with the standard 170-degree viewing angle, and it's an LED backlit display, so you're not going to experience the sort of contrast ratios and backlight control found on OLED or mini LED displays. Asus does include a dynamic dimming feature built in, but I suggest disabling this as there simply aren't enough dimming zones to avoid it becoming a big distraction. Now, this monitor features a typical brightness of 400 nits and a peak brightness of 500 nits, so it's not ideal for editing and creating HDR content. However, it is sufficient for watching movies through something like the Apple TV app. Now, for reference, its brightness rating is lower than the 600 nits of the Apple Studio display, but remember, brightness levels are not linear, so 500 to 600 might sound like a lot, but it's actually not that big of a jump like it appears to be on paper. Now, Asus's display features 60 Hz max refresh rate with a response time of 5 milliseconds, so this is not a high-end gaming monitor, but if you're just gaming with something like a Nintendo Switch, it'll be perfectly fine. Like most third-party monitors, Asus's display features a matte coating to reject ambient light. And while matte display technology, particularly the high-end nano texture used by Apple, definitely has its merits, I generally prefer a glossy display because I can usually control the lighting in my office. Matte displays, due to their layer of diffusion, they reduce text sharpness, clarity, contrast, and while this may not be a significant issue for those accustomed to matte displays, it's definitely noticeable when coming from something like a Apple Studio display or a MacBook Pro or an iPad, which all feature glossy screens with really nice sharp text. The ProArt 5K's build quality is typical of a third-party display. It's usually a combination of plastic and metal, with plastic comprising most of the materials. However, let's start by highlighting some of the positive aspects of this monitor. For starters, the included stand boasts a plethora of ergonomic adjustment features, which honestly feels like a luxury compared to the base model Apple Studio display, which only offers tilt functionality. In contrast, Asus goes all out, providing an extensive range of adjustments and then some. You have tilt plus 23 degrees to minus 5 degrees. You have a height adjustment of 0 to 130 millimeters. You have swivel ability plus 30 degrees to minus 30 degrees. And then you have pivot, aka Tate mode, plus or minus 90 degrees. Now consider that Apple charges a $400 premium just to add height adjustment capability to the Studio display, and it's easy to see the value in Asus's approach. And while Apple's stand is objectively better from a design perspective and build material perspective, I mean, it's made of high quality aluminum, the end result is essentially the same more or less. The ProArt display also includes a VESA mount option, which is a feature that you actually have to configure during the build-to-order process if you want the same thing on Apple's display. It's possible to convert the Studio display to a VESA after the fact, but that requires taking the device into the Apple Store and paying a fee. And I think they actually have to take the monitor apart in order to convert it over to a VESA mount. Speaking of mounting options, it might be worth exploring those because, like virtually all third-party displays I've used, yeah, there's a bit of wobble when typing. To be fair, Asus's display performs better than some displays that I've tried, but there's still a noticeable bobblehead effect when typing on my Magic Keyboard. Now, if you keep the height adjustment on the lower end of the scale, you can reduce the amount of wobble. This is one of the main problems that I have with third-party displays. The stand and build materials simply aren't designed to absorb the shock of your fingers pounding away on your keyboard. Apple's Studio Display, on the other hand, performs admirably in this area. Although it too isn't 100% immune to wobble, the Studio Display is by far the best I've seen in this area when using a standard monitor stand. Another feather in Asus's cap is the wealth of connectivity options. First, thank you Asus for keeping the power supply internal. This means no unsightly power bricks to litter my workspace. I also appreciate the cable management channel built into the stand stem, which makes it easy to route all the cables in a very organized way. Apple users connecting to any modern Mac will appreciate the simplicity of the DisplayPort alt mode via a single USB-C connection. In addition to display input, this single cable connection provides up to 96 watts of power to an eligible MacBook or iPad, along with connectivity to the USB hub built into the display itself. Now, like I said, there's lots of connectivity options. So you get one USB-C port with DisplayPort alt mode. You get a standard size DisplayPort 1.4 port. You get a standard size HDMI 2.1 port. You have that USB hub with 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, which provide up to 4.5 watts of power. And then you have one USB 3.2 Gen 1 port, which provides up to 15 watts of power. There's also a second USB port for the KVM that's built into this display as well. And it includes a 3.5mm headphone jack. And of course, like I said earlier, it provides 96 watts of USB-C power delivery. Unlike the Studio Display, which features a single upstream USB-C connection, the Asus ProArt 5K display comes with HDMI 2.1 and a standard DisplayPort 1.4 connection. It means that you can easily connect more than just Macs to this monitor, including game consoles, set-top boxes, etc. But the Apple Studio Display gets a win in this area too. For starters, Asus's display outright lacks a built-in webcam and microphone. It comes with integrated 2-watt speakers on the rear, but they're so puny that they might as well not even exist. Even the Mac Mini speaker, believe it or not, sounds better in my opinion, which should tell you everything you need to know about this display's speakers. Thankfully, you can use that 3.5mm headphone jack to connect a pair of headphones or set of powered speakers if you wish. Is the Apple Studio Display that much better than the Asus ProArt Display 5K? When it comes to build quality, yes, without a doubt, but it gets more interesting if you're only singling out the panels. If matte displays are not to your liking and you prefer a glossy screen with text that pops, then the Studio Display is the better choice. But if you're okay with a matte display, the two are much closer than their respective prices might indicate. The Apple Studio Display's biggest advantage is its build quality. It's comprised entirely of glass and aluminum and features no large chin, logos, or buttons on the front of the panel. Aesthetically speaking, it's a much more pleasing product to the senses. The second biggest advantage is its integration and simplicity. It features a built-in ultra-wide 12-megapixel center stage camera, a surprisingly decent 6-speaker array with support for spatial audio, and a 3-microphone array with directional beamforming for high-quality FaceTime calls and such. All of that works via a simple USB-C upstream cable. The Studio Display also features a trio of USB-C downstream inputs on the rear. However, with all that being said, is the Apple Studio Display worth twice the price of the Asus 5K display? Well, it really depends on how much you prioritize capturing the so-called Apple aesthetic in your workspace. For many people, a display it's merely a tool. And thus the answer to that question is a resounding no. And at this price difference, I would agree. Despite the Apple display having a better design, the ProArt display is unquestionably a better value, and that's what I would pick. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. However, for those that have meticulously crafted their workspace to match the minimalist Apple aesthetic, then things like value take second place. And hey, that's okay. It's just really nice to have the choice now. What do you guys think? Sound off down below in the comments with your thoughts. And be sure to check out these other videos for more. This is Jeff Benjamin with 9to5Mac.